Hello, friends! Steven Talbot here, of course. Today, my friends, is Thursday, June 21st, 2018. I'm sorry for this irking. You can see I'm on a swing and it's very loud. 2018, and I'm so happy. I'm so thrilled to have you guys here with me today. I thought today, a lot of other YouTubers, they do something called story time, and they talk about various aspects of their life and various different stories, coming out stories, first boyfriend, first time having sex, first whatever. And I found myself telling a story yesterday to my aunt and to her friend about how I got my driver's license. I thought it made for a pretty cool story because it was. When I look back on it, I think, damn, that's pretty crazy. So I've told you guys before, you may or may not know, that I grew up pretty poor, actually really poor. We actually grew up in the projects in Nashville, in government housing. And then when I was about 5 years old, I moved to my aunt, and for a few years, I sort of got to live what I consider the rich life. Back then, especially, I thought it was the rich life. But in between that, after I moved back from my living with my aunt, I moved back with my mom, and rather than living in the projects, we actually live. It's still government. It wasn't government housing. It was called Section 8, so it was like government assisted housing, a little bit nicer, or maybe a lot nicer than the projects, but still like really poor. My mom worked a whole lot, and there's nothing that signifies freedom, I think, as a teenager more than having a license and having the ability to sort of leave and to drive away and to drive yourself to work and to drive yourself to school and all those sorts of things. So as you can imagine, I not only wanted the sense of freedom that a license would afford me, but I also wanted the sense of freedom that having an income and having my own job would be. So I've literally begged and begged and begged and begged when I was 14 and 15 years old to get my first job. And my first job was at Fazoli's off of Harding Place, and I had to beg that motherfucker. His name's Daniel, God, what else was I saying? It doesn't matter. His name's Daniel. He was the GM. I went in there every day and asked him for a job. Anyways, this is not even about that. This is about my license. So, when you're 15, you can go get your learner's permit, and you're supposed to have an adult in the car. And the whole idea behind it is to get you to practice driving. And of course, there's a booklet, or at least back then, there was a booklet where you had to study the rules of the road and about speed limits and whether it's illegal to do U-turns and how four-way stops work and defensive driving and the various meanings of various signs and curves and how you can't switch lanes in the middle of an intersection and all of those sorts of rules that we've all come to know. Well, I had my learner's permit, and I think I remember my mother taking me out one time in a parking lot. That's it. So, what I used to do is every night, and this literally went on almost every single night, I would say my entire 15th year of life, every night, or I would say it might be safe to say an average of 5 nights a week. I would wait until my mother went to sleep. I would get on my hands and knees and crawl into her room. She always kept her pocketbook on the side of her bed, and I would very carefully dig through her purse and find her keys. And I would, take them like this, and I'd lift them out so they wouldn't jingle. And then I'd sort of, let them fall into my hand like this, and I'd grab them. And I'd crawl back across the floor. And I would go outside, and I'd start her car. And it was a stick shift, and I pull the emergency brake up. But then I would be afraid that she would hear the car start because the car was parked outside of her window. So then I'd run back inside, crawl along the floor, listen, crawl in her room, kind of peer up and see if she was awake or made any motion or whatever, just to, CYA, cover my ass. So then once I was assured that she was back asleep and that she was snoring, or that she had never woken up to begin with, I'd very carefully go back outside. And then I would then I would usually go get a friend, call a friend, and we would go joyriding. In the middle of the night, And you might think it would be safe. It would have been safer for me to have the car and just go around the parking lot, which is what I did the first couple of times. But then it was like, fuck it. We used to drive all over the city. Like literally, I would drive all over the city. What's funny though is it was a stick shift, and I had never driven a stick shift except for the one time my mom tried to teach me. So as you can imagine, for a long time it was like, like you know, if you've never driven a stick shift, you've seen it on movies before. It's like you have to hit the clutch and change the gear. So I did that every single night, 5 nights a week, for my entire 15th year. Well, then it was time for me to get my license. And I could not get my mother to take me to get my driver's license. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to steal her car, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to get my license. So, well, not steal her car. Well, actually, I did steal her car. So she went out of town with her new boyfriend for like, I think it was a weekend or something. It was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday or something. And so I had her car, and I actually drove her car to work while she was gone, and she never knew it. But while she was gone, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go get my fucking license. So what I was scared about though, and I tried to ask around, and nobody seemed to know from friends that already had their license. But I decided I was gonna drive her car to the DMV, take the test in her car, and get my license. Which is exactly what I did. But I was scared to do that because I was afraid that they would want to meet her, or they wouldn't want to see. I don't know. I just thought that, like, can this really be pulled off? So I was super, super nervous. But I actually drove my car. Not my car. I actually drove my mother's car to the DMV. I stood in line. I met the instructor. I did the entire driving test, both the computer test as well as actually, I think back then it might have been a written test. I can't remember. And then the actual test with the instructor next to me. I did the whole thing. And they gave me a license, and I drove her car back home. And what's interesting is that actually looking back on it, I don't really remember my mom. Well, I guess she knew I had my license. I can't remember how long it took me to tell her that I had stolen her car to go get my license, but I most certainly did, and I don't think it took that long. But she was actually thrilled once she knew I had my license, because then I could take my sister and my brother wherever they needed to go, and I could go to the store for her and go to the grocery store for her and all of those sorts of things. So anyway, thought that was a funny story that I would share with you. Maybe I'll do more stories like this. I have plenty of them. The first time I had sex, the first time I gave a blowjob, the first time I went on a date, the first time, I mean, there's an endless number of stories that I could tell. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you as always for keeping tabs on me. I really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please take a minute to subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or concerns, let me know in the comments below. And as always, until next time, enjoy yourself.